We definitely smashed. That was probably
Okay, there you go. All right.
illegal, but it was just a TA. She was just a TA.
Is it pie day or steak and blowjob day?
It was a good time. I'll say that. College was a good fucking time.
Yeah. I don't know. I was pretty drunk when I was taking college courses. Did a lot of sleeping.
That's fun.
It's probably why I ended up with my good enough diploma. Because I was like, it's good enough.
Oh, wait, that's true.
Yeah.
Y'all did college?
What do you try
Uncle Sugar was paying for it. Now, granted, I was deployed most of the time, and a lot of the courses I had to do online, but yeah.
And what would his people back home want if they ever learned just how far from them he'd really gone? He broke from them, and then he broke from himself. I'd never seen a man so broken up, ripped apart. I've seen the horror. But you have no right to call me a murderer. You have a right to kill me. You have a right to do that. But you have no right to judge me.
You got somebody on the organ now? Hey man, you're gonna pay for dinner. You're gonna fix no.
It's impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. Horror.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is March 14th, 2024. I know that we were having a little bit of a debate about whether we should call it Pie Day or Steak and Blowjob Day, but it really doesn't matter because the world is burning as usual. Funny enough that the Central Intelligence Agency was back central in a lot of the news cycle this week in regards to January 6th, goings on in Ukraine, the mistakes of our past, all of these various things. And we'll be digging into that here shortly. But I don't think we could even begin this program this evening for you without talking about what really matters to Americans everywhere. And that is the impending doom of TikTok. Thorpe, how you doing, buddy?
Well, in the words of Nancy Pelosi, tick, tack, toe. I'm excited for not being excited about this stupid bill.
Is it upsetting you? I know that you get the majority of your information from TikTok. So
Yes.
if it was to go away, you know.
My simple mind has a really hard time with numericals and alphabet and reading, I think they call it. Right?
Yeah.
And so I need influencers to inject my mind with their consciences, right?
Yeah.
And this is what allows me to be such a great, vibrant person here, right?
Yeah.
And TikTok for me is not only just a great source for open source intelligence gathering, but it's also a great source for camel toe and nipples. And I'd be very sad if it went away.
I think we better move on a little bit. Lou, how did you feel about the recent passage of House Resolution 7521?
Well, I as someone who has never, ever downloaded TikTok, I don't care. Like, I think the TikTok part, calling it a TikTok ban is I think is erroneous, and I think it's bullshit. It's more going after the ability to to have an adversarial conversation that's outside the mainstream narrative. And I think that's what's at stake with this bill.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing that, and we'll get into a minute. But let's get. I know Thaddeus. He's a big TikTok user, so let's see how he's feeling right now.
Well, happy 3.141592653 day.
I guess that's settled.
I don't give a shit about TikTok, man. I don't use it, and I think the bill in and of itself is retarded. While it is a much better targeted bill than the ham-half attempt to do it during the Trump administration. I mean, it has a very concrete goal of divestiture. You mark my motherfucking words as the basic bitch libertarian on this fucking council. Like the Patriot Act, you will rule the day that this fucking passed.
That's my thing, is like anytime that both sides get together, you know, they can't agree on shit, but they get together to pass this shit that gives them more power or gives an executive branch more power. That itself already supersedes the whole procedure of having a fucking Senate and having a fucking House of Congress and having a conversation about it. Like, to just give him the power to just willy-nilly do it. Okay, so
that isn't what it does. That isn't what it does, Lou. It does not give the president willy-nilly power to do anything.
Willy-nilly.
It's all subject to review. It's all subject to congressional review, and it's limited to 4 countries. It's limited to 4 countries, foreign adversaries, and that's all laid out in the U.S. code that's applicable.
It's
so is the NDA. That is up for review. That comes for review every time. Look, I'm not against this. Like I said, this is a much better targeted
3
attempt.
pages. Yeah.
We are in a trade war, and in war, you do what you have to do. If maybe, just maybe, the Chinese Communist Party would reciprocate and let us spilge our poison, that is our social media networks, into their country, then maybe it would be like mutually assured destruction. But as it stands, we're at a geopolitical trade war and cyber war with this country. But I'm just saying, as the basic bitch libertarian on the council, that this will bite us.
Can I approach it this way then? Okay, so are they identifying that data and having data and having our data in the wrong hands is an issue? Is that what they're protecting us from? Because all they're getting is our data, right? And if that's the case, then why can't we extrapolate that and do it towards the American companies as well?
I think the major concern with this,
money off of our data.
And again, we'll get into this later when we look in the ODNI report, because they kind of identify a lot of these issues in the threat assessment. But the major problem that America's facing right now is ideological subversion and malignment that is coming from both the Chinese government, the Russian government, the Iranian government. North Korea is not too big in that realm, you know, because he just likes to make a fuss and supply weapons and material wherever he can. With his buddies. But that's the major thing, and that's what we've seen, is that through all of this TikTok, you know, look, you got to understand, and even social media in general, we could say is poison, but there isn't really an apparatus to go after these American companies. There is an apparatus within the US code that they can go after these foreign adversaries, and again, it's limited to Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. So when everybody starts freaking out and they're saying, "Oh, this is going to be used to do all that," no, maybe it will be used as a basis to do that later. I could even see the president using this to say that there's some sort of a foreign influence, like through X potentially, like it's been suggested by some people. But it would have to go through a process then and there as well. It would be a lot tougher. So all of these people who voted for this thing, you know, you're going to get a lot of people bucking that. It's not just going to be Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz going, "Yeah, everybody who likes us watches TikTok, so we better vote against this."
Well, and you brought up your favorite person in the world, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
And she had a nice little 4-minute diatribe up in the pulpit. And I actually, you know, started listening to what she was saying, and it was kind of based, you know. And
maybe based for people who don't read.
She was putting down some pretty substantial facts, though, right? Like, if this is about protecting us from the CCP, if this is about protecting us from China, right, then why the fuck didn't they give about any shits about the spy balloon? Why did it take them 8 fucking days to wait for it to drift across all of our nuclear sites and shoot it down with a fucking Sidewinder so there's no fucking chance of recovering any of that? Why are they allowing them to purchase all of our farmland across America? Why are they allowing them to buy ranches right next to military bases with 5-mile-long airstrips? Why don't they give a shit about every other aspect to national security involving China, but only care about TikTok, especially when all those congressmen might have a shitload of stock in Meta?
Mitch McConnell.
I don't know. I don't know.
Mitch
Why does it always
McConnell's
appear that
vice
Marjorie
sister?
Taylor Greene is, doing favors for McCarthy when there's a bunch of money coming back from Ukraine? I don't know.
Yeah, also just to jump on what Trav was saying, the Mitch McConnell, his wife his wife's sister-in-law just passing. There was almost no talks about that or anything about that.
And then he steps down. And then he steps down right after that,
Yeah, and
or
then he
basically
steps
says
down
he will not run for re-election right after that. Yeah, they knew they got him.
So were they the biggest opposition to this TikTok thing, and now this is why it's moving forward since they got rid of this situation?
That's a good.
Well, I
that's a
can't
good
say I'd be
assessment.
crying about it. Yeah, that's pretty good. But moving on, there was a new J6 report came out of Loudermilk in the House Oversight Committee. And in that, they talk about the events of January 6, 2021 were preventable. The politicization of Capitol security directly contributed to the many structural and procedural failures witnessed that day. Goes on to explain that without question, the Select Committee was used as a tool for Speaker Pelosi and House Democrats to manipulate the facts surrounding January 6th and place the blame solely at the feet of President Trump, regardless of where an actual investigation would take them. I mean, I kind of worked on some of this behind the scenes here and there. So, I mean, that seems pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, it's only basically summing up what we have known, probably not necessarily from the beginning, because we can sit here and say we knew from the beginning. No, now that there have been more facts, now there's more data, now that there's more, depositions and yada yada yada. Yeah, I think everyone genuinely felt, particularly when they had the prime time, pomp and circumstance and circus, that maybe, just maybe, they were hiding something, because they were damn sure to make sure they put the victims, the Capitol Hill police victims, the Congress people who were somewhat traumatized, even though they were 7 buildings away.
Pipe bombs.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, it's funny, that investigation was remarkably quiet during that whole bread and circuses show, and now we're getting a little bit more details on, like, wait a minute, why the fuck was it? Wait a minute, why was Kamala Harris at the DNC? Who planted this bomb? How come the DC police who were there didn't see someone plant the bomb? Or when they were told that, hey, there's something over here, they didn't really move with a lot of haste. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked surrounding the actual events of January 6th, leading up to January 6th, that we're probably not going to really get any satisfactory answers on. But we were just given the bread and circuses of, the Select Committee.
Yeah, well, and to add on to that, you had Judicial Watch. They came out yesterday. Tom Fitton announced that it had received 88 pages of Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives records from the Department of Justice in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that show the Central Intelligence Agency deployed personnel to Washington, D.C. on January 6th, 2021. But, honestly, a closer reading, and I know we had the screenshots available of the chats in question. It's maybe a little bit more nuanced than that, where obviously it says there were CIA bomb techs deployed, CIA dog teams, but it doesn't really get into details there. And it doesn't even really say they were deployed. So I'm not sure what you guys are making of that exactly.
From what I was reading in there, because I tried taking myself back into cop brain, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to listen with my cop mind, like, okay, the dialogue that's going between, right? And the way it sounded is almost like one dude's reaching out to another, either through teletype or through, using the radio, and saying, hey, I think we just got a report of a bomb over here. And the other guy's like, yeah, so far we're hearing about like 4, right? And they're like, well, which buildings? And then they're like, well, we heard it was in the DNC building and the RNC building and the library and this. And they had like 5 different locations. And then another guy's hitting him back up like, well, where are you hearing this from? And he's like, oh, we heard it from the FBI. And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? And then it's saying that the CIA bomb tech team showed up to go start handling this. And they're like, okay, have they found the device yet? And they're like, no, we're still searching. And it turns out there wasn't any, other than at the one location that also happened to have those shady individuals that were not uniformed police officers that were hanging in and around the Metro Police cruiser outside of the building. You know, so like it is painting quite a weird, elaborate little web. And it sounds like there was a lot of purposeful misdirection happening maybe over the radio to add and sow a little bit more confusion and fire and fervor. Or maybe there was some planted devices that just didn't go as planned and they had to make them disappear.
Well, they were inert, so I think we need to point that out right now that they were never going.
They weren't going to cause any damage. Or
were any of those like sensors and automated? Was any of this conversation, like were any of those texts that were created, was any of that automated that initially alerted them?
No.
Like where it allows for
it was an ATF chat where basically it's, you know, people within that agency discussing with each other what's going on. I mean, that's why I say, I mean, I'm not seeing anything that I'm like, oh my God, smoking gun, feds are action or anything like that. And I just want to remind everybody, that it was here on ACTJ in early January. I can't remember if it was before or after the FBI came to my house. But we actually reported, we said that there was multiple agency involvement on the ground that day. Now, the problem again is in the text. I don't see anything that suggests that there was any sort of, you know, sanctioning by CIA, particularly for these guys to be there. Not saying that there couldn't be, or that there couldn't be some sort of compartmentalized operation happening. I know that, we have confirmed the presence of at least one other person. I don't know if they were involved in this or not. But again, I haven't seen any of the people that have been, so far identified as being agents or something else as engaging in anything that you could really consider to be illegal activity. So you run into this problem. I mean, were these guys there just as citizens and then they kicked something up the chain because they were there? It gets really difficult to parse out. So you're going to need more information before you can make any sort of determination.
Yeah. Keeping in mind, what is their job? They're an intelligence gathering agency, right? Like that's their fucking job. And you're like, oh my God, fucking 2.5 million people are outside of the fucking Capitol right now. And it's only like 3 blocks away. Maybe within reason, taking a crapshoot here, they might be present, right? To watch what the fuck's going on with 2.8 million people outside of the fucking Capitol, right?
Yeah, let's steel man this a little bit, right? Let's not attribute to malice what just might be sheer fucking incompetence and the fog
or
of
not
war.
incompetence. I mean,
or might be fog of war. Right. I mean, if you remember September 11th, like a bomb went off in front of the State Department. A plane hit the Pentagon. Someone just tried to shoot up the front of the Capitol.
But or not incompetence, because aren't they trying to enter into Congress right now where it was an established insurrection and the people involved were insurrectionists? Like that's what they're trying to do with the Trump case. Like they're trying to establish that this was an actual insurrection when there was no game planning. To me, it was just like either this is
a riot.
Yeah, at best.
Well, and speaking of which, I just want to point out that, and I'm kind of a little out of order here, Dan, but you can pull up the screenshots of tweets that I put out. Actually, in 2022. where I talked about on December 30th, 2020, the Secret Service provided intelligence to the U.S. Capitol Police and other agencies regarding threats being made by a member of the Vorherrschaft Division. It appears as though not a single member of this group has been arrested, charged, or investigated. What's more interesting is that they were identified in this intelligence report that was prepared for U.S. Secret Service. Okay, so they were identified, they had their names, they knew that they were coming into town to incite violence. And then again, what I'm going to say is what I've been told is that these were known assets, Ukrainian assets. So that doesn't mean that they were CIA agents, but they are assets in Eastern Europe who had worked adjacent with CIA or some other intelligence agencies over there. So that all rolls into this, especially when it comes out recently. Headline USA reported that Riley June Williams, which a lot of people recognize her or think as someone who took Pelosi's laptops or took laptops from there. It's recently come out that she was involved in several chats with members of the Order of Nine Angles. And for those that don't know, the Order of Nine Angles is a satanic Nazi group with ties to Vorherrschaft Division. So it's interesting to me, and I will point back to the article I wrote in September at 1776returns.com, Beowulf's American Lament. You need to understand that all of this stuff has ties going all the way back to the late 1940s in the aftermath of World War II, when CIA started using all of these intel agencies as assets in Eastern Europe. So it is bizarre that you have, these assets that came into DC ahead. And again, I have not identified them. I haven't seen anything that identifies them, but it all kind of ties into that greater picture that honestly, there just needs to be more information before people run away and scream, with whatever their particular political narrative is. And I'm going to say it right now as a J6er who's been very involved in all of that. Every bit of this is political theater. There's a reason why they waited for over 3 years to do anything from the Republican Party. They all suck.
If you're waiting for the GOP to be your saviors, you'll be waiting a very long time for the return of the Mahdi. And that's a reference to the, extremist Iranians that believe that the Mahdi will usher in the end of the world, and he's a boy down a well, and whatever other craziness they believe. No, the GOP have always been controlled opposition. They are a party that is strictly there to make sure that the American people believe that we have, at the very least, a two-party system.
It's a uniparty. It's a uniparty. Like I saw through that. I think in 2004, I think that was my come to Jesus moment that, they're working together, and it wasn't just like the Tim Russer, conspiracy side of it. It was the fact that I don't know. It was just something died about the idea that there were two competing parties in 2004 for me as an adult that was just becoming. That was the election that really was like, all right, this is all bullshit.
Yeah, last week I get a phone call from the Minnesota DFL, and they're screening, and it's the Democratic Party of Minnesota, right? And they're screening Minnesota voters on a bunch of issues, right? And they asked me, point blank on like the eighth question, they're like, "Are you a registered Republican?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And I said, "I have a tendency to vote Republican a lot, but I'm not a Republican." She goes, "Well, what would you describe yourself as?" And I said, "Okay, the old saying of two wings of the same bird?" She goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Sometimes a bird would favor a wing, right?" She's like, "No, that doesn't make sense." I was like, "Okay, how about this? Sometimes you got a favorite hand to jerk off with." Right?
What's yours, Travis?
The right.
Are you a righty?
Yeah.
I'm so right wing, man. That's how I get down.
All right. Well,
I've tried with my left, and it was.
I guess
worst.
we know it's not steak and blowjob day around here. So, bringing back to this whole idea left, right, and back to the House Oversight Committee, it was recently reported in Axios, Jamie Raskin, the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, says that he's got it. He's ready. He's ready to keep fighting to remove Trump from the ballot, despite the issues that they had in the Supreme Court with getting him kicked off that way. So, they're not giving up. They're not giving up. Meanwhile, Biden and Trump, though, they've both clinched their respective nominations. Trump, 77 years old, Biden at 81 years old. So, I mean, I don't know what
Here we
Raskin
go
thinks he's going to
again.
do. They've really pulled out all the stops to get rid of Trump. And then today, this wasn't really in the copy, but I also saw that there was some discussion that they were going to have to drop the charges against Trump for the classified documents case under selective prosecution because they've declined, Robert Hurd declined to prosecute Joe Biden for, being old and forgetful.
Dude, I had put Biden saying that that something about inflation's the best of all the countries in America. Like, I thought y'all would have kept that one.
We need a cut scene. Like every time he says something that makes him look absolutely feeble and makes the United States absolutely weak, Dan needs to bring that one scene from freaking Black Panther. Is this your king?
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Did you vote for it? Right? They voted for it. 81 million motherfucking votes, fam. But look, back on the Raskin tip though, these people are not gonna stop, man. They're not, because here's the deal: in that Supreme Court unanimous-ish decision, they did actually provide a mechanism for which Congress could basically make him ineligible and stuff like that. And look, he's probably fundraising. It's an election year. His supporters are probably rabid as fuck, and he just needs to raise some money. And the best way to raise money in this particularly in this election cycle, January 6th, and I want to kill my baby, make sure I can. That's that's what they're going to do. And that's what they're going to do. So yeah, Raskin is just he has a perverse incentive to say, I'm going to keep going, just like Russia.
Well, and it's interesting. I think that, people would get a kick out of this. I don't think I mentioned this on the last show, but this all came from 1871. And I'm trying to remember exactly which Congress it was. But the reason why Congress can pass a law to deal with this whole insurrection issue and how to remove somebody, from that position, being able to run, is because they did pass a law back in the day, but then it got lost. So nobody knows where the original law is that they passed. So nobody has the text of it. I mean, that's where we're at.
Jack's complete lack of surprise.
So that's what necessitates that, but not to get too far off into that business. We got to keep it rolling around here. We always got to keep it rolling. I just want to remind everybody who is watching, we appreciate you, whether you're at Ops Lens TV, whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, any of these other places that we stream out to, give us a like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about us, whatever it takes. We know that we're kind of a dirty little secret with a lot of people, even people in Mar-a-Lago, but you can share. It's okay. And we do appreciate that. If you'd like to support anything we do, you can go to 1776returns.com and you can find there's a little button somewhere around there that says stand with us. So if you want to stand with us, that's greatly appreciated. Anything to help keep the lights on around here. There was a recent story that we wanted to get into in the UK Telegraph. It was written by Matthew Henderson, and it really laid out the problem with this Chinese-Russian cooperation. It said Putin is squeezing every ruble he can out of the Russian state in pursuit of victory in Ukraine. Increasingly, his war-driven economy, however, is propped up by support from China. So China's become this trade partner with Russia. And let's face it, as long as Russia's keeping us occupied in Ukraine, it kind of does benefit old Xi Jinping.
Hold on to your butts.
In the meanwhile, they flood the world with cheap, electric vehicles, cheap solar power, fentanyl, and generally disinformation and what is it? What's the word? What's the term you used earlier, Sean? Like psychological warfare or whatever.
Ideological subversion.
Ideological subversion. Yes.
Why do you think he was so open about talking about like the how American politicians and the bankers are devaluing the dollar and that's their greatest asset? Why do you think he openly talked about that with Tucker? Like, do you think that's to kind of just get the people thinking about it, or to let them know that they know? Like, why would he bring that up?
It's to Putin's benefit to do anything he can to widen the divisions in this country. That's why I say it doesn't even have to be a lie at this point for the Russians and the Chinese to use it against us, as we'll detail later, kind of towards the end, when we talk about maybe some of the things that Weinstein said in that podcast. Look, America is incredibly divided. And what's more interesting about this support from China is that Putin can now afford to direct 40% of his 2024 budget, or 10% of the GDP, to military spending, which that's pretty substantial for Russia when they've already, shown that they have the ability to throw bodies at the problem with kind of reckless abandon. So it's going to continue to be a war of attrition. And again, China benefits from that.
Why are we pretending as a nation and news in general that this relationship between China and Russia is a relatively new thing? Like, I feel like we talked about this shit 3-4 years ago.
Initiative. We talked about the Belt Road Initiative.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, if we even go back 5 years ago, like, they were doing joint military operations between Russia, China, and Iran. Then it was Russia, China, Iran, and Venezuela. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, Venezuela, Brazil. And Iran and Russia and China formed BRICS. And then from there, everybody starts jumping on. And what do we start seeing politically? And what do we start seeing with all this subversion? Oh, here we have narratives coming from the BRICS faction and the Western faction, that is the US dollar, right? So you have the Western economy versus BRICS. And that's the stage of World War III. That's what we have.
That's what they're setting up.
Cooperation between China and Russia is not a new fucking thing. This is something that's been around.
It's a long time, and it's a long time coming. Yeah, it's a long time coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we point out, they're the seeds of World War II, which I guess that's why it makes this, pretty interesting. Trump recently met with the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, as Colin Rugg explained on Twitter. He visited Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, and according to Orban, Trump has a very clear vision that's hard to disagree with. First, he will not give a single penny for the Russo-Ukrainian war, he said of Trump, and that's why the war will end. I mean, is it really that simple, guys? Is it really that simple? Trump shows up in office day one, if we make it to 2025, and he cuts off the spigot to Ukraine and it's over?
That is absolutely possibly not going to happen.
No way.
That's absolutely not going to happen. There are cynical reasons why that won't happen, and there are practical reasons why that won't happen. First of all, like, if you thought that the deep state went after Trump for basically breaking their monopoly on control of DC, wait till he comes in there and fucks with their money laundering train that is Ukraine, right? That's the cynic come me. Secondly, this money's already pretty much spent. It's kind of already allocated and stuff like that. So it's really not, the wheels of government move weirdly and slowly and are kind of fucked up. He could probably by the summer or at least the fall of 2025 begin to make noises to unwind us from the Ukrainian entanglement. But even then, we still have to spend money that isn't necessarily going to Ukraine on rearming. So I don't know, man. It's a little bit more complicated than just like, he swears his hand on the Bible, and then within like 48 hours of doing that, like the guns go silent in Donbass. It's not going.
We're all gonna die.
even within a year
of him taking office, right?
Hold on, real quick, Chad. Entanglement is such a good word. Entanglement is such a solid word. Solid word. Go ahead, Chad.
Presuming that he wins the presidency within the first year, it's just not going to even happen. Even if he had a super majority, right? So we even got to take into context: are they going to have the House, Senate, and the fucking presidency, right? Because then you would have an easier time pulling something like this or akin to this off, right? But if he doesn't have that, we're going to see a lot of what's been going on over the last 3 months, where they're going to put up a bill that says, hey, we need to fund Ukraine, and Trump's going to say, I ain't going to fucking sign it then, right? And they're going to go, oh, but your friends Israel, they need some money. And if you want to help your friends Israel with some money, you got to help Ukraine with some money. And those are the only bills we're going to draft. So, Mr. President, what do you want to do?
Sign the bill or the Jews get it.
That's well, and again, I'll beat this like the dead horse that it is. But it's like, if we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about Ukraine, you know, obviously that is a very old money laundering and influence, you know, operation that we've run since World War II. And speaking, which you alluded to, we said that too much. I know we say allude.
Let's say entanglement,
some ludes, but yeah, entanglement. So we've been entangled with Ukraine for quite some time. But the other money laundering operation, And actually, you could look at it when you look at the Ben Gurion Canal project. So it's really just a bypass project.
That's an insane.
Is Israel. And interestingly enough, I know we talked about this a little bit, in the State of the Union when Biden announced that we were going to be sending U.S. military over there to construct a port at Gaza, but they set off, and we did have this video to the sounds of the Imperial March. Is that what would get you hyped up? Yeah. Does that hype you up, T Daddy? Does that?
My bad. I was trying to.
Does that hype me up? Not necessarily. Well, look, yes, I kind of like, it's catchy, but no, like, look, we spend a lot of our time trying to say that we are a malevolent empire, right? But we're not an empire. We are protectors of the peace and stuff like that. Don't play in to the fact that we are a fucking empire by literally adopting the theme song of the great and dark galactic empire. Read the room. Read the room.
I don't know, man. Go ahead.
You are the motherfucking Antichrist.
When we were talking earlier about like the whole CIA thing, right? Do we need to steel man this too? I mean, it's very highly probable that this is taken out of context big time too, right? Because if you notice in that video, nobody's in formation, nobody's at attention, everybody's looking pretty damn sloppy, and there's a shitload of civilian females there in civilian attire, right, standing on the deck. And with this being played over some PA system, it was probably some like pre-deployment ceremony thing that was going on with like a family readiness group type thing. And maybe as an inside joke in their fleet, like maybe, they're like, hey, here comes the captain. It's fucking Darth Vader, right? And they played that in the background. And then some smart ass is, pulling this clip and putting it on Twitter, like, here we come on our way to Israel, and I don't see it all the way fitting like a jigsaw puzzle here, but I mean, I guess that if it gets your dick hard, whatever.
Well, I mean, this is probably one of those ideological subversion things too. I mean, it's a great clip. It obviously went viral on social media. They can do whatever they want there. I'm going to be bloody honest when it comes to this whole mess. I don't know that there is a path for the United States to retract from any of this stuff. So maybe they ought to start playing the Imperial March more often. Maybe there ought to be some exertion of force going on, which it's interesting. And I think we do have to relate back to this, and we'll get into more of the ODNI threat assessment, but it's like this came up in the news today and it relates to Israel. But you saw the assessment where they talked about how Bibi Netanyahu, he's going to refuse to negotiate with the PLA, assuming peace ever happens again after they're done, I guess, bombing the shit out of the open air prison there, or whatever they're doing. And maybe, they don't want to negotiate. Well, let me finish. But then you had Schumer come out and say right on the heels of that, Bibi needs to go. So we've talked about CIA ops and everything else. I mean, I think we've got to guess that there's some different people that are going to be shipped over to Israel that aren't already there. You're going to see a lot more U.S. influence in that entire conflict. Are we looking at the precursor to regime change in Israel?
I think you're looking at the tail end of oh my shit, I almost lost it, right? When the October 7th attack happened, I had a very good personal friend of mine that's a professor that has a doctorate in medieval history and in history specifically in that region. And I called him for a lot of context clues because I was lost in the sauce because a lot of my personal experience comes from the Iraqis, right? And so I'm like, hey, help me understand this situation. He said, well, what do you know about Bibi Netanyahu's political position at this time? And I said, shit, like, educate me. He said, well, he was basically about a couple days away from being beheaded. right? He said that there was a military coup that was starting to happen inside of Israel, that there was a lot of political tension happening. He said, if you think that it's bad between Donald Trump and the right and MAGA conservatives and Democrats and Biden and all that in America, he goes, it's nothing. He said that's like a 16th compared to what was going on inside Israel. The left and right divide in Israel was massive. Like they were on the verge of civil war, right? And he said what was so interesting about the attack and what really played into Bibi's favor on this is that all of those villages that Hamas hit were these bordering villages around the gate. And the citizens of those villages were sympathizers to the Palestinians that moved out there purposefully, and they would fly kites over the gate with messages of peace. And Hamas killed them, which played into Bibi's hand.
I don't think
Bibi's hand got played big time on this because now he got to play on the sympathies of the people that were asking for his head, screaming for revenge. And all the people that hated the Palestinians had their answer and had their ticket for success on this. Let's go ahead and go after him. The whole country started uniting behind Bibi Netanyahu when he was about 3 days from getting kicked out in the first place.
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, it was an awfully
That's true.
conspicuous and convenient
Yeah.
intelligence failure, especially when you're dealing with a wall where they have sensors that can detect cockroaches.
Roaches, yeah.
walking,
But
so.
will it be a PR change the way it was from like Obama, or the way it was from like Bush to Obama though? Like, will they just get someone who's just like smoother at being like, yo, we still got to genocide these guys, but still, yo, Israel.
Let me give you the reality on the ground of what the Israeli government will do. It doesn't matter if they're left or right. Most Israeli governments, even the ones that are somewhat dovish, but at the same time, like left of center, that our Western elites love and the secular Jews want to suck dick or give fellatio to,
Sloppy.
they're all they must maintain military readiness. Period. Point blank. Full stop. Whether they're provoking Palestinians or not. When Bibi is on his way out, Bibi will be gone probably by next year, because as Travis alluded to, I mean, there was a damn near civil war. I mean, it was the society had ripped apart. Members of the IDF were refusing to report for duty. It was all this stuff, and it was all because of this judicial nonsense or whatever. He overplayed his hand. He barely won the 17 elections that had to be fucking done in order for him to even get the majority to even take over and become or reclaim the prime ministership. When this is all said and done, and the bodies are fucking piled up in Rafah, and he can basically, declare victory, and the bloodlust of the secular Jews that hated his guts before go back to, okay, now that our bloodlust is settled, now we got to get back to the issue of living like secular Jews and we hate Bibi. They will have their October 7th commission. They will find that the Bibi Netanyahu government was negligent, which it probably was, or even responsible. He will be thrown out. He will be gone, but his legacy will have been secured.
Well, in Thaddeus, to expand on that and what Sean was alluding to earlier when he was saying, was this a great intelligence failure? I mean, no. Egypt came out and called that shit out immediately. They said, hey, what the fuck? Like, we warned you 4 months ago that they were planning this because they tried to get us in on this, right? Egypt dropped a manhole-sized fucking dime and said Iran is trying to get Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine to all attack Israel at the same time, simultaneously. And they invited Egypt to get in on that shit. And Egypt said, I don't want that fucking smoke. And Egypt warned Israel 4 months in advance. And Bibi Netanyahu sat on that shit until that attack happened because it played into his fucking hand.
Well,
Thank
if
you,
that doesn't
Abraham
work out,
Accords.
if that doesn't, we may get back to that. If that doesn't work out, though, and we'll kind of tie this back a little bit, but we don't got to spend too much time on this. We're seeing this continue. Is that if they can't just continue with the genocide in Gaza, which that's what it is. I'm sorry, objectively, that's what's going on there, whether you believe in it or not, whether you think it's a good idea or not, which I've had a lot of people justify it to me based on their biblical viewpoints. So just call it what it is. It's genocide, whether God commanded you to do it or not. But the other thing that Israel can agree on is continuing to provide weapons and support to Islamic Azerbaijan so that they can kill Armenian Christians. So, you know, I guess that's fine. You can always go with genocide too, no matter what Aliyev says about being closer to peace. A lot of that just revolves around the fact that Russia is distracted elsewhere. They can't do any peacekeeping in the region. And with Turkey being in NATO and Israel calling shots there as well, you know, they need a launch pad to attack Iran, and Azerbaijan is the perfect place for that. So that's why they're going to continue to do that. So, you know, Armenian Christians, sorry, fuck you, you're shit out of luck, apparently.
Israel's got like the fourth greatest, military, and they're in attacking Gaza. I don't even think they're ranked. But, with this Azerbaijan, it's the same thing, the 59th ranked army versus the 102nd ranked army. And it's just like, it's like, why is this going on? Like the stronger army should never be the one to attack in 2024. I don't understand.
They didn't.
Well, that's because they want to kill everyone.
like Lou, timeline, October 7th. What happened? Israel attacked itself? Is that what happened?
Yes, through proxy of Hamas.
Okay.
ISIS does. They do little things to trigger other things.
Okay, so
wait.
Hamas is owned by Israel.
What's that?
Hamas is owned by Israel? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, of course, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
and it's not.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not that they have enough tracking on them where they have every bit of information, like that if they were to attack, they would know how many feet they were away from the fucking border wall. Like they're superior. Number 4 versus nothing.
So what were they supposed to do with the hundreds of thousands of rockets that overwhelmed the Iron Dome?
Maybe not.
They have bombed the shit out of it beforehand.
Maybe not fund them forever. Maybe not fund them. I don't know. This is putting me at a
so the Iranian munitions coming into Palestine, right, to attack Israel, was Israel funding it to attack itself.
That's what I think, so that Netanyahu can get out of the situation that you were talking about, where he was about to get beheaded.
I think that's a little bit way too more complex of a mousetrap.
Of course,
because he gets handed the intelligence from Egypt saying, like, hey, look, this is what they're doing. This is what they're planning on doing. They try to get us in on this, and we don't want that smoke.
Okay,
but he's like, what can I do with that?
All right. Well, since we're getting all upset, let's not drop the ball here and just completely forget about everything else that we got to get in here, because it does relate that when Hamas spokesman Abu Ubaida began a speech marking the 100th day of war in Gaza, one confounding yet eye-opening proclamation escaped the headlines, listing the motives for the Palestinian militant group's October 7th massacre in Israel. He accused Jews of bringing red cows to the Holy Land. Travis, what's with these red cows? What are the red cows all about?
This was a wild story.
I have no opinion upon this.
Oh, bullshit! You're our esoteric expert.
Yeah,
come on,
I know.
Expert.
They must be burned and sacrificed upon the temple mound, so that the temple may be risen from the ground again. And there we can hermetically represent the grand council of Yahweh, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and call on the Messiah, or some shit like that.
Dude,
all
I
right.
love it.
Yeah, basically it all comes down to is genocide is cool as long as your God approves. But again, we're unsure what this means for the future of American missionaries in Haiti, who are probably all CIA. But apparently there's a gang leader. I don't know. Is it Jimmy Cherizier barbecue running around? You know what is going on in Haiti? I know, Thad, you were kind of looking into that and refreshing yourself.
It's because he's black.
Short here.
Yeah, it's definitely because I'm black, motherfucker. That's right.
Shit.
That's right. No, look, man. Look, my wife was asking me about this, like in her normie way, like, hey, so what the hell's going on in Haiti, and like, why is this so fucked up? She's like, well, because Haiti's been fucked up since 1804.
Clinton
and there are colonial and historical reasons why they've never really been able. They've had a failure to launch. So this barbecue guy was an ex-cop, and he was just, pardon my French, the nigga with the most guns and biggest balls. And he said, you know what? Fuck this shit. This place is fucked up. I'm gonna take this motherfucker over. He raised an army, and he essentially looks like, unlike the cat in Chad or Chaz, he overthrew the government. And he is the meanest motherfucker on the streets. He'll burn you, and if he's hungry, he'll eat you.
So Mao's law is in full effect there, in that all political power proceeds from the barrel of a gun, and then the general currency when we deal with a plight situation is going to be ears and noses, probably. Is that where we're at? Yeah. So we don't. Thank God the Federal Reserve isn't in control there anymore.
As Siri says,
I'm just glad the Clinton Foundation is there to save Haiti again.
Yeah. Well, if we don't watch our ass and pay attention to some of these threats around the world, we are going to be dealing with a similar situation. I know we detailed a lot of that, but let's rotate back. I know we mentioned a couple of things from this as we run short with what we've got left. So, but the ODNI released their annual threat assessment, said during the last year, the United States faces an increasingly fragile global order strained by accelerating strategic competition among major powers, more intense and unpredictable transnational challenges, and multiple regional conflicts with far-reaching implications. An ambitious but anxious China, a confrontational Russia, some regional powers such as Iran, and more capable non-state actors are challenging long-standing rules of the international system, as well as U.S. primacy within it. I mean, when I read through the report, I didn't really find myself in disagreement with much of anything.
That's a lot of words for, like, because, lack of a better word, because of American feebleness, the fucking world is on fucking fire.
Wow.
That's it.
I just think that they're moving. I think that the bankers are moving to a multipolar world because it makes more sense to the Silk Road people. There's so many people that can just be served by the Silk Road, and to cater to this thing called America for them doesn't seem to make sense anymore.
And if you guys want to listen to Lou blame everything on the banks, you can do that on Fedcast with Harrison Schultz on Saturdays at the ACTJ. So be sure to check that out. But the other thing that I thought that was particularly interesting was it talked about how often U.S. actions intended to deter foreign aggression or escalation are interpreted by adversaries as reinforcing their own perceptions. So essentially, it's like when you read through the report, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. It's a very dangerous world. The United States has made many mistakes in foreign policy. We've fucked shit up. We haven't been a very good empire, and things are getting scary out there.
And I
agreed.
That was by design. The empire being bad at what it's doing, I contend that was on purpose since 1913 and shit. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's pretty based. I mean, you're not exactly talking about a pro-American institution when you talk about the Federal Reserve, when you talk about the global banking cartels, but we got to be really careful when we talk about global banking cartels. I don't know how you guys do it, because eventually it's going to lead you into some really weird places where you start playing speeches by Adolf Hitler. What was your basic impression of the assessment there, Combat Rev?
He's got to take a sip of water.
Look, I remember at the end of, God, what was that, 2020 or so, the ODNI director gave out a briefing about COVID and the coronavirus and how he knew that it was a lab leak, and they fired him. And then replaced him with a new director. And then that new director had a complete 180 in her report. And it's that same director. So fuck that whole report, because I'm pretty sure it's all just a bunch of fabricated nonsense like it was the first place.
Well, they did lay out that 4 of the agencies under the direction of ODNI have determined that it did originate from the lab, including the National Security Council. So for whatever that's worth, when I read the report, it may be too little too late.
Vindication.
The entire thing, but yeah, I mean, it's vindication. We're running short on time. I know that give us a quick hit about Elon Musk and OpenAI then.
So basically, if you haven't heard, OpenAI is being sued yet again, not only by the New York Times, but by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is bitching and complaining and suing OpenAI because he feels that he was swindled, because when he originally funded OpenAI, remember, he did originally fund OpenAI. The objective was to create AGI, artificial general intelligence, a super intelligence, a Terminator, Skynet, blah, blah, blah. But it became very, very apparent as time went on that, hey, it was going to cost a lot more money to train these models. And so they basically said, well, we need a structure that would allow us to recruit talent and do whatever. Elon Musk is just like, yeah, cool, that's cool. But then he's like, you know what? Nah, I just want to take it over and bring it under Tesla. So he tried to take control of OpenAI. They said, fuck that. We don't want to do that shit. He said, well, fuck you. I'm going to take my ball and go home. He reneged on 56 million that he was supposed to, of the 100 million he was supposed to contribute. That forced OpenAI into the arms of Microsoft, who then spun up the profit side to create OpenAI, ChatGPT, do whatever. And Elon Musk feels that because of the original mission and that you are not fulfilling the original mission, I am suing you and telling you you need to open source your models. In a nutshell, it's just Elon being fucking Elon and irreverent and stuff like that. In the meanwhile, everyone said, well, hey, Elon, you started XAI and you have a very robust AI unit within Tesla. Why don't you open source, Grok, which is basically the, chatbot that's within Twitter that you have to pay for. And subsequently, he announced Monday that he would open source Grok, at least Grok 1.0. I have been checking Hugging Face and GitHub. I have yet to see the model and the weights. That remains to be seen. But it's Elon being fucking Elon.
Bernie Sanders on Wednesday introduced a bill to establish a standard 4-day work week in the United States without any reduction in pay. The bill over a 4-year period would lower the threshold required for overtime pay from 40 hours to 32 hours. I'm going to leave that. And I know we talked about the Weinstein interview. If you could pull that up real quick, manager, just so that people can get a taste of what we were talking about there. It was on the Chris Williamson channel, so people can go check this out, because we'll kind of start to wrap up there. But how do we feel about 32-hour work weeks and the prediction for the 2024 election, Lou?
Whoa. Can you repeat that question? I had a lot of shit.
How do you feel about Bernie's proposal for a 32-hour work week? And, and then just kind of wrap up your thoughts on Weinstein, that show we saw, and predictions for the 2024 election.
All right. So I'll say this. To me, it would be an increase to 32 hours. And I think that that's bullshit, first of all. Second of all, what he said about the trough, that's what I've been saying. It's like it's so obvious that they're working together to just gaslight their sides in order to do somebody else's bidding. They're no longer doing the bidding of the people, they're doing somebody else's. And with these agendas, like Agenda 21, Agenda 30, and all these global mandates and all this other shit, it's obvious who it is. It's not us. And then that's the main point. And then as far as this election, I am a non-violent human. I don't want violence, but at this point, I'm looking at that tree of liberty like it needs to be watered. It needs to.
All right, cut him off before he gets us kicked off. And just get rid of this fucking idiot. All right, let's kick it over to you, Thad.
Well, I mean, about a 32-hour work week. Well, the surefire way to make big tech accelerate its push toward artificial general intelligence and robotics is to mandate a fucking 32-hour work week. As for the election and what kind of Weinstein was talking about, look, man, we're all gonna die.
All right, good deal, Rev. You've got a little bit of time here. You got a little time,
okay. Well,
about
the
3 minutes.
32-hour work week, right?
2 minutes.
If it allows people to be happier and have a better work-life balance and have more time with their children and, maybe give more to the community, and yet at the same time still retain the same amount of pay, either way, you're paying the same amount of taxes to help keep me fat so I can sit here and do this. And that makes me happy, and it should make you happy. Now, as far as it comes to what Weinstein was saying, I agree with a handful of things he was saying. Not everything. I think that there is a lot of issues going on in this country. There's a lot of hate and division. And one of the things that we really enjoy about this council in particular is like even the heated, back and forth between Lou and I still love Lou dearly. And as long as I maintain eye contact, it isn't gay.
All right. That's very good. As always, appreciate your thoughts. Combat Rev. Look, a 32-hour work week is a long time coming, in my opinion. This is just a common sense thing. When you look at all of the productivity increases in productivity in the last 30 years, give me a break. People should be spending more time with their families. They should be spending more time with their communities. The election in 2024, like Weinstein points out, those dudes are old. Really have no idea what's going to happen. So that brings us back to this other thing, and just general advice, going all the way back to Christ himself. Get out there and love your neighbor. Good night, everybody.